Throughout time, Rome won several major wars. Naturally, they never ceased to celebrate their victories, and they did so with a triumph. The magnificence and glory of the Roman triumph was something that always enthralled the crowds in Roman streets. This grand parade was an expression of victory and power, besides being an event that made the Romans' hearts pound with pride in their nation. Triumph for a Roman general was the highest honor attainable, a celebration for having defeated foreign enemies and an affirmation of his position as a military leader. The triumphal march began in the Fields of Mars, a site that stood beyond the city's sacred boundaries. It was here that the commander, decked out in the symbols of his victory, prepared to enter Rome. But tradition held that the procession could not begin inside the Pomerium, the city's sacred precincts. The strategic starting point provided a majestic entry into the city through the Porta Triumphalis. The triumph commenced with a parade through Rome's most prominent streets, with the senators wearing their purple embroidered togas, as decreed by Augustus. The victorious general was given his triumphal ornaments, garments and ornaments bestowed by the empire on the triumphalist. On the day of his triumph, the general would wear a crown of laurel leaves, a vest, and a gold-embroidered purple cloak. Holding a laurel branch in one hand, he marched in a golden chariot, a quadriga pulled by 4 white horses, beaming with pride at his conquest before the emotional crowd. As he rode along, the general handed over his command to the Senate and magistrates, signaling the transition from militarism to civilian rule. However magnificent the spectacle, it was also laced with dark elements. Prisoners taken during the campaign walked around in chains, bound to meet an uncertain future as slaves or to fight in the amphitheater. Meanwhile, enemy leaders suffered varying fates, some being allowed to live in Rome for the rest of their days, while others met a cruel fate. Prisoners due for execution were likely to be left in the Mamertine prison, while the parade moved down the Via Sacra. Entering the Roman Forum was the climax of the triumph, a moment when the general and his army were greeted by the population. Here, among the temples and towering buildings, the commander would perform sacrificial rituals together with the Roman priests. The triumph was not merely a celebration of victory, but also an assertion of Roman power and authority, with the general depositing his laurel branch at the foot of the statue of Jupiter in the Capitoline Temple. The celebration climaxed in a triumphal banquet, often lasting several days, signaling the pinnacle of military success and glory. The general's generosity was then tested. Largely financed by the loot amassed during military campaigns, these banquets were a flashy expression of wealth and triumph. Sophisticated feasts were organized for the elite, while improvised tables with cheaper food for the masses epitomized the general's generosity to the people and the prosperity brought by victory. Triumphant generals were not only paraded through the Roman streets, their achievements were inscribed on coins, spreading fame and generosity throughout the empire. After their triumph, triumphal robes and war trophies were exhibited in the foyers of noble houses. Monuments and buildings were also built to commemorate this victory. When Pompey opened Rome's first stone theater in 55 BC, he not only gave a gift to the people, but also provided a venue to display trophies, paintings, and statues that testified to his victories. One of Rome's greatest triumphs ever took place in 71 AD, when the then General Titus destroyed Jerusalem. When he arrived in Rome, Titus and his men were met with a massive celebration by the Romans. During that parade through the city streets, the crowds were overwhelmed by the wealth obtained in Jerusalem. Several sacred artifacts and objects exclusively reserved for the high priest were displayed in the Roman streets. Titus and his men paraded through the city streets in a procession, ending with the punishment of the Jewish leaders. To celebrate the victory, Vespasian commissioned the grandiose construction of the Temple of Peace, adorned with treasures looted from Jerusalem. This monument became a symbol of Roman triumph and dominance, eternalizing the memory of the Jewish defeat. The emperor would often decide not to hold a triumph, especially when the victorious general was not a member of the imperial family. Nevertheless, a smaller version of the triumph was held, called an ovation, and this also paid tribute to the victorious general, giving him the opportunity to ride along in the procession and be cheered on by the crowds. The Roman triumph was a unique combination of spectacle and power that echoed through the city streets and into the hearts of the Roman people.